evening, everyone. I am Phil Clark, the Brit of the Brit and Yankee Craft Beer Podcast. This is the Brit and Yankee Craft Beer Pub Studios. Welcome, everybody, and I'm very, very happy to say that I have been asked to host this event, which is for Brother Chimp's Malty Flight and Cheese Tasting. In front of me, I have all the wonderful little 8-ounce containers, which are fantastic. So hopefully all of you have got those in front of you as well. I also have my cheese. I have my cheese knife. I'm ready to go. So I was very happy to be asked to do this by Steve Newman, who is the owner and founder of Brother Chimp Brewing, for a couple of reasons. Because firstly, it's been tough days for breweries in the Chicagoland area, in general in Illinois, and I would expect across the nation. And anything I can do to help out these guys and try and get the word out about them so that they will be there when we're out of this horrible COVID, then great. But secondly, and most importantly, Brother Chimp Brewing was one of the breweries that opened up during, or actually just at the point when we went into COVID lockdown. And so, Steve has done his utmost to produce great beers, classic styles, and keep himself going. So we want to star some of these beers, focus on some of these beers. And so it's with these 4 brews that have been chosen by Sam and Steve that we are going to be focusing on tonight. And we've got 3 great Midwest cheeses, and I think they come from the Great American Cheese Private Collection. Steve will tell us a little bit more about it in a minute. So I'd like to introduce these 2 guys. As I'm looking at them, they're on both sides. Over on that side is Sam Altaner, who is the brewmaster over there. Hello. Over this side is Steve Newman, founder and owner of Brother Chimp. So Steve, tell us what this is all about and tell us a little bit about Brother Chimp.
So tonight is, first I want to thank everybody for joining us in this endeavor on such short notice. Hopefully we'll do more of these fun things with a little more notice in the future. But what tonight is about is really tasting 2 of my favorite things, which are beer and cheese. So worked with Sam to try and select a few of our malty beers that we thought would go really well with the malty cheese plate. The idea is, first, to get started, if you haven't already taken your beers out of the fridge, take them out of the fridge, find your glasses, and go ahead and pour them in the glass. This will give them a little time to open up and to get just slightly warmer, so you'll get a few more of those malty flavors out of the beers as we go along. I think most of you know Brother Chimp because you've probably been here before, since see a lot of familiar faces. But, what we really want to be is your local neighborhood pub that makes some really fine beers. As Phil mentioned, we tend to focus on more traditional beers, a lot of European lagers and some British ales and some Belgians. So we want it to be a fun place to hang out first and foremost. But if you've got your beers poured, let me show you. I'm going to step over here for a quick.
And of course, Steve is frozen, so that's points off him. So whilst he's moving over to pour the beer, I have my first one. The first one we're going to focus on is Ludwig Vienna Lager. And I always want to say it's Ludwig Beethoven's lager, but it's not. So I'm going to go ahead and pour that one out. Now, you may see me. I've got a camera over here that I want to focus on the pouring. Oh, by the way, while Steve is coming back, which hopefully he will, this cheese board is absolutely amazing because there's a little flap on the side of it. And if you pull that off, which I have done, then you get the cheeses coming off at the same time. There they go. Look at that. Beautiful. And you've got a ready-made cheese board, which you can turn these cheeses out onto and cut. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pour the Vienna Lager. Hopefully Steve will get back in just a second. I'm going to turn it over to Sam because Sam, tell us all about the Vienna Lager.
All right, thanks, Phil. So yeah, we're gonna start this tasting with the Vienna Lager, choosing that one because it's going to be the lightest of all the malty beers that we'll be trying tonight. So as the name suggests, it is a lager. It is a crisp and easy drinking beer that originated out of Vienna, Austria. And so this style kind of came to be in the mid-1800s when the English were figuring out how to malt grains in a way that used dry heat rather than direct heat. And so you would heat up the air and that would toast the grains and you'd get some really nice character out of it without going straight into the roasty flavors that are associated with some of the darker styles like porters, stouts, etc. And so some breweries in Vienna started focusing on making their own malts. And so this is basically a tribute to that style of malt, the Vienna malt. So we use a very clean yeast strain in this to really just let the malt shine. It's the Weihenstephan strain. It's an extremely old strain that goes back to the world's oldest continuously running brewery, Weihenstephaner. It dates back to 1040, the year 1040. So it's truly been around for an extraordinary amount of time because it is so clean. It doesn't really have any fruity esters to it. It really just lets you get the essence of the grain itself. And so this beer itself is about 99% Vienna malt. If you want to take a sip, please, I encourage you to go ahead, take a sniff, drink a little bit of it. It may have just the slightest hint of hop aroma from some German noble hops, but truly the vast majority of the flavor and aroma that you're going to be getting from this beer is directly from the malt. And it's got a nice light breadiness to it, a little biscuity quality, maybe just like a slightest hint of toast. But as lager should be, it should finish very crisp and easy to drink. Something that's not going to linger on the palate very long. Just something that's really enjoyable on a hot day that you can have a couple of and aren't going to be too drunk.
I see that Steve is back. Hello, Steve. Can you tell us about the cheese that we're pairing this with, Steve? Because I've got mine on my cheese board. You guys bought us out of the Malty Cheese Flight, so I don't have the Malty Cheese Flight. So I was going to allow Sam, since he has the Malty Cheese Flight, to go ahead, if you wouldn't mind, and just say a couple of words about the cheese. I'm going to make you do all the heavy lifting tonight, Sam.
No, I'm totally cool with that. So yeah, you've got hopefully you've got a cheese flight in front of you as well. These are handpicked to go with malty beers. We chose some of our favorite malty beers to go with these cheeses. There's 3 types of cheese here, and truly any of the cheeses will go well with any of the beers. It's just kind of the nature of the flavor profiles of both of them. There are some that I think go better than others, so I'll highlight kind of what my favorite pairings are. You can try that, but I'd encourage everyone to just try what you like, see how they go together. I don't know, with any combination that you want to go with. But so to start off, the cheese on the bottom is the lightest or the softest cheese. It is a cheese called Butterkäse, I think. I don't know. It's German, and I took Spanish, so pardon my pronunciation. But the translation from German means butter cheese, so it's very soft, rich, super creamy, pretty mild cheese, and I think that it pairs nicely. Sorry, pardon my cat here. Come on, get out of here.
Oh, an extra guest. Welcome.
Yeah.
It's Butterkäse.
Butterkäse. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. So it's slightly tangy. It's used. They use a pasteurized Holstein cow's milk, and it's a nice mild cheese. I think that it goes with the light notes of the beer. Neither one overpowers the other. They just work really nicely in conjunction with one another.
And I enjoy taking a sip of the beer, a sip of the cheese, and then actually I kind of mix them together, and you get a really interesting flavor when you do that. Beer is one of these great things that you can do anything with, and so long as you're enjoying that, then great.
Yeah,
Cheers.
couldn't agree more, really. So I don't know, I guess I'll just run through each of the cheeses really quick so you kind of have a background and you can like try them out with each of the beers as we go along. So the next one, the middle one, the orange, the super orange one is Pinconning Sharp. So this comes out of Pinconning, Michigan. It's an aged Colby cheese that's from pasteurized whole cow's milk. It's very rich, creamy, and sharp. Really pairs well with some of the darker notes in some of our beers, the roasty flavors, as well as some of the fruity notes. That we'll find as we go along when we hit more of like the Belgian Dubbel style. And so the last cheese, which is the top one, if you're looking at it on the cheese Malty Flight, would be the Cowda. So this is an aged Gouda. It is the hardest cheese that comes in the Malty Flight, and it has a lot of Parmesan cheese notes. It's kind of got that rich, intense, concentrated Parmesan flavor that hits you right up front. It's got a big acid background and long, lingering, complex finish to it from the aging process.
And I should say that we are going to pair those up with some of the other beers. But we've had the Vienna Lager. Steve, anything else you want to say on that?
No, I guess the only answer, we do try to have a little bit of fun with our names. So you notice our Vienna Lager is called Ludwig because there are a couple of fairly famous composers from Vienna with the name of Ludwig. And so that's, if you're curious about the name, it really is just that simple.
Yeah, thank you. I'm doing the cheese jokes here, by the way. There we go. All right, so how about we move on to number 2? Now, of course, you guys may not have finished your beers. I understand you've got 2 tasting glasses with you that came with the package. Is that right, Steve?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Depending on what package they took.
So you can put one to the side to wash off, get ready for the next one, and use the new one. I've only got 1 glass, so I have to go with that. So, Sam, we're up. Oh, I'm doing the wrong one here. We're up with the next one, which is Monkey's Uncle Dunkel. Tell us all about that one.
Yeah, for sure. So again, this is a lager. I wanted to put both of the lagers up front because lager's traditionally known for an exceptionally crisp flavor. This one traditionally comes out of Munich, Germany, and is just a hint darker than the Vienna Lager. It's been around a lot longer as well. When the German beer purity law of 1516 was enacted, Reinheitsgebot, this was the most popular dark beer at the time. And so if you just hold it up to the light, it's got a nice, beautiful color to it, transparent, and really of this clarity and the crispness of the beer that comes from an extended lagering period. And this goes for the Vienna as well, which we do in horizontal lagering tanks. Normal tanks that you ferment in are conical, so they're up, down, and then have a cone shape at the bottom. But for lagers, we put them for an extra time in a large horizontal lagering tank. And that really helps clean up any off flavors that might exist in the beer and really just give a extremely smooth, easy, crisp finish. Because that's what you're looking for from a lager. You want something that's just easy to drink, that you don't have to think about. It's in every person's beer. It's delicious. So, okay, a little bit more about Dunkel. This one, again, malt forward. That's the name of the game here tonight. But it's got a little more complexity to it than just showcasing the Vienna malt in the last beer. It's 4.1%, and it's got a nice toasty maltiness that comes from Munich malts, a variety of Munich malts, as well as some roasted malts. So it's got a little hint of roastiness to it as well, but still very easy drinking, not too over the top like porter stouts. And so this is, the word Dunkel means dark in German. So Dunkel lager is the dark lager. It's not the darkest of the German lagers. They typically go from Helles, which is the lightest of the German lagers, to Dunkel, which is dark, and then Schwarzbier, which is the darkest of the lagers, at least the lower ABV ones. And so this is a bit in the middle, but it does have some of those characteristics, those roasty characteristics. And we will have a Schwarzbier that'll be coming out here in the next couple weeks or so. So hold on tight for that one. So yeah, cheers.
And I would say, Sam, he's probably too shy to say this, but when I was there tasting this at the brewery the other day, I felt that this was equally as good as the Warsteiner Dunkel, which is a classic, and I think he's done a really good job with this. The cheese that he's pairing with it is the Pinconning, I think goes well with it. And I don't know about you guys, but this is a great combination. Steve's back. Steve, anything else to say on this one? Where's the name come from?
I'll stick on the path of giving little stories about the names because they can sometimes interest people. I have a niece whose favorite beer is Dunkel, and of course, being brother of Chimp, it only seemed natural to call it Monkey's Uncle's Dunkel. So, cheers and enjoy.
So there we go. Hopefully you're enjoying it. And also the other thing that people will hopefully notice is that as we're going through these beers, the coloring is going to be all the same type of brown, right? But it's going to go from light up to dark. And also the ABV is going to go that way too, which is typically a way that you're going to do tastings. I'd encourage people to go out after this and pick up examples of a classic version of each of these and compare them. I think you'll find that most of them are very favorable to going down to your local brewery, Brother Chimp, and picking it up there. All right, Sam, I think we're up to the next one. I'm lagging behind, right? So it's a win. Oh, by the way, this is an absolutely fantastic world trip that we're going on. Not only have we been to Vienna, we've been to Germany. Now we're headed to Bruges. And the final one will come back to the United Kingdom and Scotland. We'll talk about that shortly. What do we got next, Sam? Crack it open, boy.
All right. So I'm cracking open the third one here. This is the Winter in Bruges. This is a Belgian Dubbel, or Dubbel, or Dubbel. So this one pours a nice ruby color, also very, you could see right through it. It's got a nice, beautiful sheen to it. Belgians. So Belgians are typically characterized by a different yeast strain. So they'll taste significantly different, whereas the yeast that was used in both of the lagers is utilized to have an extremely clean, crisp flavor, so the underlying malt will shine through much more. The Belgian strains really focus on how the yeast plays off of the grains and hops to a lesser extent as well. So you have a lot of esters, which are a byproduct of the yeast during fermentation. They give off a lot of fruity notes. And so in this one, I think that you'll find that there's a lot of dark fruit notes that come from this, slight caramel undertones to it, a little bit of blueberry, I think, comes off of this. Not that we added blueberry, it's just kind of one of the notes that I'm getting from the beer itself. And so Belgian beers in general, the way that they're classified, at least the Trappist styles, are Enkel, which is 1, Dubbel, which is 2, Triple, 3, and Quadruple, which is 4. So they go in increasing ABV and alternating light, dark, light, dark. So this is a dark one that's got some of these like nice dark fruit notes to it. Finishes surprisingly dry for how fruity it comes off, and I think it pairs really nicely with the Pinconning as well. But truly, it could go with a lot of these. Hops are less of a forefront on this one. Mostly just kind of letting the yeast play off of the various malts that we're using in this.
I just realized, Sam, that I guess if you'd taken each of your little squares of cheese and cut it into 4, then you could test each one with a different beer. Because we're suggesting what you should have, but I've taken the Chowda. No, it's not a chowder. It's a Cowda. There we go. And that worked very, very well indeed, as far as I was concerned. But you suggested the Pinconning, so that's cool. Steve?
I mean, everyone's got a different palate. I'm not going to tell you what to eat. There's 12 different combinations you can make out of these. So, I would definitely encourage you to do whatever you want.
Yeah, I guess one thing I'd say is taking up on the yeast note that Sam talked about, if you come to the brewery and you want to kind of do a little of your own tasting, one thing you could do is we not only have the Dubbel, we have the Broken Bricks Belgian Blonde, and we have Kavina, which is our Pale Blonde. And these are all beers that were brewed from that same yeast. So you can kind of get a little note of how the different malts that we use in each of those play with the yeast, but you'll probably notice a little bit of that yeasty esters that come from the Belgian in each of those beers. As for the name on this one, there's a fantastic movie, if you haven't seen it, you should, called In Bruges. And so I also look at it as a Dubbel. It's just a little more of a winter beer for me. So it just, I haven't spent a winter in Bruges, but I hope to someday, and it's what it reminded me of. So cheers and enjoy.
But I should pick up here and say that In Bruges is a really good movie, but it's a little bit violent in places. So if you don't like violence, don't watch it. I just want to give a disclaimer there.
That's
but
a fair point.
that's star Colin Farrell.
Well, that's okay.
All right, so we go to number 4 then, Sam. What do you reckon?
All right. So number 4, we got a little bit of a hard to pronounce name. We're going to go with Saorsa. This is a Gaelic word, and it means freedom, liberation, salvation, redemption. And it's a wee heavy style ale. And so what is a wee heavy style ale? It comes from Scotland. There's a number of Scottish styles. Again, kind of like the Belgian Trappist styles, they go up in ABV. As you go, you've got light Scottish ale that's the lowest. That's about like 2.5 to 3% ABV. Heavy Scottish ale is like 3 to 4, still not very high ABV percentage. Scottish export is like 4 to 5. And then strong Scotch ale, Scotch rather than Scottish, is like 6.5 to 10%. And those being on the upper end of that range are classified as the wee heavy. I don't know, Phil, you enlightened me on a little bit of the history behind the name. I don't know if you want to tell that anecdote about why they...
Yeah, sure. So they used to rate these beers, the Scotch beers, by shilling. And I think if you go to, I think it's either Odell's or New Belgium, but I believe it's Odell's, they do shilling beers. So they do 60, 90, 120. So what does that mean? Well, it means that beer is stronger and therefore they taxed it more. So the 120 shilling would be a very high beer. Sam, what is this? This is probably something like an 80 shilling.
Yeah, I'd say that this is, I mean, if we're talking like the 1700s, maybe like a 80 to 100 shilling beer, it's 8% in alcohol is what.
Okay. So what is a shilling? Well, a shilling was a coin. And unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember when we used to have pounds, shillings, and pence. But then we went to decimal currency in 1972. Well, in 1790, a shilling was worth in today's money about $4.25. And I don't know whether or not that holds true, but Sam, you were talking about how much a barrel of beer would be worth in shillings, and I think you said something around 100 to 150 shillings for this particular type of beer.
Yeah, it was about, so for the lower ABV range beers, they would cost around 50 to 60 shillings, and then for the higher ABV beers, which this would absolutely count, as this would be around 100 to 160 shillings.
So if you work this out, then actually there's two barrels. There's two kegs to a barrel of beer, I think it is, and there's 200. That makes about 206 or so imperial pints. So it works out to be about $2 a pint for a beer like this back in 1790s, which was quite expensive. And I know, Sam, we were talking about a tale that I had. You know, sometimes there are great stories that come out of the beer history. And they used to say that the guys who used to rate how much tax they would pay would go around to the breweries and they would take a drop of the beer and they would drop it onto a seat. And these guys would wear trousers with a leather patch on the back of their trousers, and they would drop it on the seat. They'd sit on the seat for 5 minutes, and then they could tell how sticky it was when they stood up, how much they were going to charge in tax for this beer. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I got a bridge that I could sell you later on, okay?
But yeah, I guess I didn't really get into the tasting notes right now. And I don't mean to tell you what to taste in a beer, but from this one, I get a lot of strong, rich caramel and toffee notes, maybe like some blackstrap molasses even. It's very rich and boozy. And then I think it has a nice, slightly boozy, like brownie batter finish. I think it has like some nice dark chocolate notes to finish it off there. And I don't know, personally, I like this one with the Cowda a lot. I like to have a strong, rich cheese to stand up to the heavy flavors of a big beer like this.
So, Steve, where does the name come from?
So, so we have a good Scottish friend, and so we learned the word, and it's actually pronounced, I believe, it's different. I found out, I think, in Ireland from Scotland, but in Scotland, I believe it should be Saorsa is how it's pronounced. And he had this tattooed on his arm because he's a big believer in Scotland finally getting their freedom. And I really wanted to have Sam brew a beer that would help keep people warm outside this winter for us. And I've always loved a good Scottish ale, so I chose that. And my lovely wife, Laura, helped me come up with the name for it because really going into this year, I felt like salvation, redemption, freedom, and liberty is what we all needed. So we made sure this was the first beer that we actually tapped in 2021 with the hope that 2021 would bring us what we all need. What I really love about this beer is it has all those rich flavors that Sam talked about, but it has just a wonderful finish where a lot of times you get a beer like this and I feel like you almost end up with a cloying kind of sweetness to the end of it. And I just feel like this one just finishes off really beautifully. So absolutely love what Sam did with this beer.
Yeah, and I would congratulate Sam on this beer because the mouthfeel is absolutely tremendous. And I agree with you, Steve. The finish is good. I always like a Scotch ale that has a little bit of earthiness in it. And it's not really earthy, but it's got that twist on it. It's kind of a malty thing. And this has got all that. And I guess there's only one thing that we can say, right? We're bringing Braveheart into this. So Sam and Steve, after 3, 1, 2, 3. Freedom! Those Brits.
Being Saorsa!
Yeah. All right. Well, and by the way, I paired that with the strongest cheese on the cheese board, which I think was the Cowda, and it worked very well. But I am going to try it with the Butterkäse as well, which is the soft cheese, because I think, they always say that if you're pairing beer with food, it can be something that's a complete opposite or something that is in parallel with it, if you will. So here's a complete opposite. Let's see if it works. Yeah, it's good. Steve, Sam, thank you very much indeed for allowing me to help taste your beers here. I think at this point, we'd like to throw it open to anybody who has a question. So at the risk of causing havoc, everybody can unmute if you want to. And then if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand. We've got Ed and Mike. Ed, which one is which, by the way?
I'm Ed. I'm Mike.
Who's the other one?
I'm Heather.
That's Heather.
Hello, Heather. Oh, Scottish Heather. How appropriate.
So we've been in there a number of times. And Steve, I've never asked you, where did the name Brother Chimp come from?
So I've had a fantasy baseball team for over 30 years. So yes, I was there at the beginning. And the name of the team is the Chimp Monks. The problem, and I thought when I was getting ready to open the brewery, chimps are fun, monks no beer. This would be a great name for a brewery. Unfortunately, Chimp Monk, when said quickly, sounds like chipmunk.
Right.
And so I didn't want, starting a new business, having confusion about the name is not a good thing. And so it took a while, and I thought, well, Brother Monk, really kind of the same thing. And people aren't confused now about the name. So that's how it morphed into Brother Chimp Brewing.
Cool. Thank you.
Nice.
First of all, thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun. This is great. And Sam, I've learned a lot. When you, and this maybe Steve, you want to chime in on this one too. When you guys start out to create a new beer, like the Saorsa, for example, what's your process and how many trials and errors do you go through?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess when I'm starting a recipe, there's a number of things that I go through. If it's going to be a beer like Saorsa, where I haven't brewed a ton of Wee Heavies in my time. I've brewed a few, but there's a number of them that I've tried that I really enjoy. And so I think to the beers that I've tried, like Founders, Dirty Bastard, and Three Floyd's Robert the Bruce, some like really good Scotch ales, and what I like about those beers and how I can emulate some of those flavors. And so for these, I start with the malts. I'm working within a bit of a construct of an ABV range just based on the style. So I'll build a recipe up to that and then start layering in some dark caramel malts, some chocolate malts, some light caramel malts to give like a baseline sweetness to it. And then, I guess I just take a step back. I think about what hops I want to use in these. That's less of a concern with these because obviously the hops aren't coming through as much as the malts are, but you still need some underlying bitterness to balance out the sweetness of the malts themselves. And I don't know. This is a hard question because I like go back and forth and tinker until I'm like, this is the one. But I don't do any trial batches like a 5 gallon or anything. I just go for it. I don't know. I've been brewing professionally for 5 years now ish. Something like that. And it's kind of one of these things that I have a good impression when I write out a recipe, if it's going to be drinkable or not. And so I just kind of have to trust my gut at some point and go with what my instincts and kind of like the baseline of what the beers that I would like to try to emulate dictate.
Yeah, Ron, I was going to say, if you've been to other breweries, you probably usually see those little pilot systems and all. And I feel kind of like Sam is a trapeze artist that I make perform without a net, because if you've been here, we have absolutely no extra room. So I just make him go for it, and he's got to get it right on the first try. And he's really pretty much amazing at it. If you remember the Oktoberfest, that was actually the very first beer that Sam brewed on that system. So he had no trial time, no time to get used to the system. And I think he just made one of the best Oktoberfest I've ever enjoyed. So it's a real credit to Sam and what he's been able to do. I try and give him the tools, but I don't let him practice.
And if I could add into this, that the difference, but most people who go into brewing professionally are home brewers originally, but the difference between the home brewer and the professional brewer is that if you make a 5 gallon batch at home and it doesn't work out, you haven't lost much. If you're making a bunch of beer, 20, 30, 40 gallons, whatever it is you guys make, you don't get it right, then that's an expensive item on your bottom line. So all credit to these guys who make a beer, they perfect it, and then they repeat it.
I just want to say, I don't know how I'm a home brewer. I've done, 15, 20 brews at home and stuff. I don't know how you squeezed the flavor that you did out of this Monkey's Uncle Dunkel at 4%. I don't know what you did to get that kind of flavor out of that. It was delicious. How do you get like a really great flavor out of a low ABV beer?
Okay, so I really appreciate that. That's really kind words. One thing is just like truly starting with good ingredients to begin with. So a lot of breweries will use for lagers, they'll start with like a base 2-row as like the bulk of their grain for their lagers, and then layer in a little bit of Vienna, a little bit of Munich. For this one, our base is just completely Munich. We use just like a ton of Munich and then layer in different Munichs to it, as well as various roasted malts. So yeah, this is our lowest ABV beer of the tasting. I believe it's 4.2%. Let me check my cheat sheet.
4.1, I think, but
4.1%. All right, even lower. But it's really, I don't know. I can't remember if you said, I think you said you were a home brewer, and I'll mash a little high on the mash temp in this to give it a little bit of body to it. But I think that really the heavy lifting is being done by the quality grains that we're using in these.
yeah, and I love that you asked that, Matt, because when I started home brewing, one of the things that I started to appreciate was that you didn't have to have a high ABV beer to have a lot of flavor. And part of what I really wanted to do here is to kind of have a local pub where you can come in, you can have more than one beer, and you enjoy it, and you're still getting home safely. So that's kind of a big goal of mine, was to have a lot of flavorful beers that aren't over the top. Of course, you're still in the winter, you need a Saorsa, but you'll generally find that we've got a few beers in the 4 and 5% range that you can safely enjoy more than one.
Hey guys, hi Phil, hi Steve, Sam.
George, good to see you again.
Hi. But my question was, you really opened your business in the most challenging of times. How have you been able to survive, and is everything going good for you guys?
It is a challenging time. It kills me that I had one night where people actually drank at this bar. It was just a couple of friends of mine because it was the night before shutdown. But what's been really wonderful is the reception that we've gotten from the local community and people like you, George, who keep coming back. I had wanted to get this going for a while and decided we just needed to do it. And we only gave a couple of days notice, and we had this wonderful participation. So what's getting us through this is really the wonderful customer base that we've got. I really love that I've gotten to be friends with a lot of the people who come in here. I'm very fortunate to have a staff that I think treats everybody like I would want to treat everybody. And that's what warms my heart is when our reviews are either they start great beer or great staff, or great staff and great beer. And that's what we hope to be. So it's not the easiest of times, but we will get to the spring and we'll have our outdoor happening again. Although I've got to really say how much I appreciate all the polar chimps that have come out and braved the cold with our heaters and had their beers. But we'll get to the other side of this, and I cannot wait to celebrate at the bar.
And I'd just like to add in there that, Steve, you were talking about it being a very small local place. That's the type of brewery that you can really go to the tap room and enjoy a pint or two. And Steve is great because I found him at Water Street Studios, where he was very early on in his career displaying his beers. And he had an English bitter there. And I said, it's really good, Steve, but you need to tweak it a little bit. And he's tweaked it. And I believe you now have Shiloh. Is that right?
Well, yeah, Shiloh is what I call the ordinary bitter beer, which I think you've really enjoyed tremendously. And the beer you had at the time is what we call Brigadoon now, and we've adjusted it a little bit again. So we'll get there.
Well, I would like to also say that whenever I go in there, you were talking about your staff. The wonderful Jessica was absolutely tremendous. She's been a great person, very knowledgeable, and she will pour you a great pint.
Yes. And this really probably never would have happened without Jessica, too, because when I started to homebrew, Jessica was the manager at the homebrew shop up in St. Charles, so she actually has taught me a thing or two.
If anybody has any more questions, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we're going to, we could go on forever talking about beer, right, guys?
Yeah. But before we go, Phil, I do want to thank you so much for hosting this for us. It's really been a blast for me, and I hope everybody else has enjoyed it. And we'll look at trying to do some more of these in the future.
Some questions as well?
Yeah, actually, I don't have a question, but I just want to say I love your fortitude for sticking this out, and we appreciate it because having a really great place that isn't overrun by IPAs. I am not an IPA fan, and yeah, we appreciate. Not that I'm okay with a nice IPA. I have that palate, but there's so much in the Maltese that even I didn't know. And I love the Saorsa. It's amazing. So you guys are doing great work. Please stick with it. And please let those of us who are out here and who came tonight, if you struggle in any way, shape, or form, you got to let us know so that we can help you out, because you guys have earned being in our community, and we need a place where we can come and hang out and have a pint occasionally. So we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for those kind words. And you should know there was a time when I thought I wasn't going to have an IPA as I was planning this out, because I love the malty so much. And the reason for the name, our West Coast, we do have on all the time, and it hurts a little that we probably sold more of it than anything else, is for the masses, because I did brew that one for the masses, not for me, although I do really enjoy it. And Sam just brewed a fantastic batch of it, but I appreciate the support.
All right. Well, I don't want to thank you guys again for allowing me to come in and taste your beers. I like the classic styles, but because of our podcast, we try all sorts of different beers. And by the way, if you guys want to subscribe to us, we're out on YouTube. It's the Brit and Yankee Craft Beer Podcast. We're out on all the podcast aggregators, mostly, if you've got an iPhone or a smartphone, you'll find us. So listen to us. We like to try and focus on Illinois breweries as much as possible. And I'm very happy to say that Steve and Jessica came down to the Brit and Yankee Pub Studios and actually recorded before they opened. Isn't that right, Steve?
That's right. It was one of the last things that was still open.
Yeah.
we came one of the last ones to get down to the pub.
That's right, you were. Steve, tell us, well, these guys all know, but for the purposes of the video, Steve, tell us where they can find you.
So the best way to find us is we are on Orchard Road, just west of Randall Road. Kind of in front of Turf Room is a restaurant many people know. We're also just about 2 miles kind of northeast of 88 if you exit on Orchard. And we'd love to see you. We have heaters.